Are you like your father, a gangster?
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
Kraven the Hunter is a 2024 American superhero film produced by Sony Pictures, based on the Marvel Comics character Sergei Kravenov, better known as Kraven. This film represents a significant installment in Sony's Spider-Man universe, offering a standalone narrative that delves deep into the origin and psyche of one of Spider-Man's most iconic adversaries. Directed by J.C. Shander, with a screenplay crafted by Richard Wenk, Art Markham, and Matt Holloway, the film seeks to combine the visceral thrill of a superhero action movie with the psychological depth of a character-driven drama. The production was overseen by prominent producers Avi Arad, Matt Tolmach, and David Hausholter, and it features a score composed by Benjamin Wallfish along with Evgeny and Sasha Galperine. The film was primarily shot in locations spanning the United States, Russia, Ghana, and the United Kingdom, blending urban environments with untamed wilderness to reflect the duality of Kraven's life as both hunter and man. With a runtime of 127 minutes and a budget estimated between $110 and $130 million, Kraven the Hunter is an ambitious endeavor in scale, aiming to establish a darker, R-rated corner of the superhero genre. The story begins with the early life of Sergei Kravenov, whose formative experiences shaped the man he will ultimately become. The narrative traces back to his childhood with his half-brother Dmitry and their mother, whose death profoundly affects them both. Their father, Nikolai Kravenov, a domineering and morally complex figure, takes them on a hunting expedition in Africa, specifically Ghana, to pursue a legendary lion named Tsar. This hunting trip serves as a critical turning point for young Sergei, who exhibits a deep respect for the lion, refusing to take the fatal shot that his father demands. A confrontation ensues, leading to Sergei being attacked by Tsar. Though he survives, the encounter leaves him marked both physically and spiritually, planting the seeds of his future transformation. It is here that the mystical elements of the story begin to surface, as Sergei is rescued and healed by Calypso, a mysterious woman with deep knowledge of ancient remedies and arcane secrets. She administers a serum derived from her grandmother, which not only heals his physical wounds but awakens latent abilities within him, setting the stage for his journey into becoming Kraven. This interaction with Calypso introduces the audience to the morally ambiguous, almost mystical dimension of the film, contrasting with the brutal, physical challenges Kraven faces. As Sergei matures, he distances himself from his father's path of cold-blooded hunting and embraces the teachings of his mother's sanctuary in Russia. Here, he hones his newfound powers, developing extraordinary strength, agility, and sensory perception that allow him to surpass ordinary humans in combat and survival. The film meticulously chronicles his transformation from a young, conflicted boy into a formidable vigilante who, while morally complex, is guided by a personal code that blends respect for life with relentless pursuit of justice. Kraven's approach to justice is not simple. He targets criminals and corrupt individuals, employing violent and strategic methods to neutralize threats. His journey is punctuated by encounters with law enforcement, rival hunters, and the criminal underworld, all of which challenge his values and sharpen his skills. Central to the narrative is Kraven's complicated relationship with his family, particularly his father Nikolai and half-brother Dmitry. Nikolai represents the authoritarian and ruthless aspect of Sergei's upbringing, a figure whose choices drive Sergei away from traditional notions of hunting for sport. Dmitry, on the other hand, provides a mirror to Kraven's own internal struggles, reflecting both vulnerability and resentment toward their shared familial legacy. The kidnapping of Dmitry later in the film acts as a narrative catalyst, forcing Kraven to confront his past, reconcile with his family dynamics, and test the limits of his abilities and ethical boundaries. Alongside these familial conflicts, the film introduces high-stakes antagonists who propel the action sequences and heighten narrative tension. Alexei "Rhino" Sitsevic, portrayed with a mix of menace and tragic complexity by Alessandro Nivola, embodies the external threat that pushes Kraven to his limits. His formidable strength and imposing presence serve as both a literal and symbolic challenge, representing the overpowering forces that Kraven must overcome to fulfill his mission. The Foreigner, played by Christopher Abbott, brings an additional layer of danger, wielding ocular hypnosis and calculated precision to further complicate Kraven's path. The interactions between Kraven, his allies, and these antagonists underscore the film's exploration of morality, power, and survival, making the action sequences not just thrilling but narratively meaningful. Aaron Taylor Johnson delivers a nuanced performance as Kraven, balancing the character's physical intensity with emotional depth. Russell Crowe's portrayal of Nikolai Kravenov adds gravitas to the familial conflict, while Fred Heckinger's Dmitri captures the conflicting loyalties and rivalries that drive the brotherly dynamic. Ariana DeBose as Calypso brings an enigmatic and mystical presence, guiding Kraven while simultaneously asserting her own moral perspective. Supporting roles, including Murat Seven, Yuri Kolokolnikov, Tom Reed, and Masha Vasyukova, contribute to the layered narrative, enriching the world-building and adding texture to the socio-political environment in which the story unfolds. Production-wise, Kraven the Hunter employed a combination of practical effects, CGI, and immersive cinematography to capture the visceral nature of hunting and combat sequences. The African savanna scenes were shot with attention to ecological authenticity, showcasing the raw beauty and danger of the natural world. The urban settings in London and Russia provide a stark contrast, emphasizing the duality of Kraven's existence as both a creature of the wild and a man navigating human society. The musical score heightens tension and emotional resonance, seamlessly integrating orchestral motifs with modern sound design to reflect Kraven's internal and external struggles. The release of the film was met with anticipation and some delays, including adjustments due to the SAG-AFTRA strike. It premiered theatrically in the United States on December 13, 2024, followed by a digital release on January 14, 2025, and a Blu-ray and 4K UHD release on March 4, 2025. Netflix streaming in the US began on March 13, 2025, broadening its audience reach. Despite a strong marketing campaign, which included red band trailers, promotional tie-ins, and the strategic release of the first 8 minutes online, the film experienced underwhelming box office returns, grossing around $62 million worldwide against its considerable budget. Critical reception skewed negative, with particular emphasis on perceived weaknesses in pacing and narrative cohesion, though performances and visual craftsmanship were generally praised. Analysts noted that while the film ambitiously reimagined Kraven's origin, it struggled to find a balance between character development and blockbuster spectacle. Thematically, Kraven the Hunter explores identity, legacy, and morality, using Sergei's transformation as a lens to examine the ethical complexities of power. His journey from a boy torn between familial expectations and personal morality to a fully realized hunter reflects broader human struggles with duty, revenge, and self-definition. The interplay between mystical elements, like Calypso's serum and the near-supernatural qualities of his animal encounters, and grounded action sequences underscores the duality of the character, making him compelling not merely as a villain or hero but as a morally intricate figure navigating a morally complex world. The film's visual and narrative motifs, such as the recurring presence of lions, forests, and wild animals, reinforce the symbolism of Kraven's connection to nature and his philosophy of strength, honor, and respect. The use of familial and fraternal conflict deepens the story, framing Kraven's personal battles within a wider context of legacy, expectation, and redemption. This combination of action, moral exploration, and family drama distinguishes the film from more conventional superhero fare, offering audiences a blend of spectacle and psychological insight. In conclusion, Kraven the Hunter stands as a bold, if polarizing, entry in Sony's Spider-Man universe. It ambitiously attempts to merge the blockbuster superhero format with character-driven storytelling, examining themes of morality, family, and identity through the lens of one of Marvel's most enigmatic characters. While its commercial and critical performance fell short of expectations, the film provides a detailed and immersive origin story that enriches the narrative possibilities of Kraven as both a hunter and a symbol of human complexity. Its blend of visceral action, psychological depth, and moral ambiguity ensures that it remains a notable experiment in the superhero genre, offering a nuanced perspective on the challenges of heroism, villainy, and the thin line that separates the two. The story begins with an intense, raw origin, Sergei Kravenov, the son of a powerful and ruthless crime lord, endures trauma and family legacy from a young age. His mother's death, which he blames on his father Nikolai, sets the emotional backdrop for his transformation. From early on, Sergei is drawn into his father's world. His father is not a benevolent patriarch but a violent figure who demands strength from his sons, rejecting softness and pushing them into the wild to prove themselves. On an African hunting safari, controlled by his father, Sergei is nearly killed by a lion. In a pivotal moment, he is saved by a mysterious woman named Calypso, who administers a strange serum derived from the lion's blood or essence. This incident marks a turning point. Sergei emerges changed. He develops heightened physical abilities, strength, speed, reflexes, traits that align him with the apex predators of nature, yet also a moral conflict. He loves animals, yet he is recruited into hunting and violence. Disgusted with his father's cruelty and the murder of the lion, Sergei flees to a remote sanctuary in Russia, distancing himself from the crime empire his father built. There he trains, learns survival and hunting not purely for the thrill of kill but with a twisted purpose, to target those he deems unworthy, poachers, criminals, killers of nature. As he refines his skills, he becomes Kraven the Hunter. He intentionally gets himself imprisoned to reach and kill a notorious crime lord, proving his evolution from victim to predator. His half-brother Dmitri, meanwhile, remains under their father's influence, eventually becoming a master of disguise and deception, the chameleon. Their paths diverge. Sergei hunts criminals, Dmitri uses masks and trickery. The father looms as the ultimate legacy Sergei must reject. When Kraven lives in London, he reconnects with Calypso, who is now a lawyer and occult practitioner. She aids him in identifying predators among humans. At the same time, a new villain emerges, Alexei "Rhino" Sitsevic, a Russian mercenary who uses experimental serum to become a human/rhino hybrid. Rhino teams up with a mysterious assassin known as the Foreigner, capable of ocular hypnosis and other strange abilities. They set a trap for Kraven. Dmitri is kidnapped, Nikolai refuses to pay ransom, and Kraven is pulled into a web of betrayal and violence. The film travels across continents, Siberia, London, Turkey, Africa, and builds to a climactic confrontation in which Kraven uses his animal instincts, strategic cunning, and physical prowess. He unleashes a buffalo stampede to take down Rhino, then confronts his father Nikolai, sabotaging his rifle and leaving him vulnerable to nature's justice. In the closing moments, Kraven receives the iconic lion-skin vest of Tsar, the lion killed earlier, and takes up his mantle fully, while Dmitri inherits the criminal empire and reveals shape-shifting powers, signaling the ongoing conflict and potential future threat. Behind the scenes, the film was produced by major studios, Columbia Pictures, Marvel Entertainment, Arad Productions, and Matt Tolmach Productions, and distributed by Sony Pictures Releasing. It was directed by J. C. Shander, and the screenplay was written by Richard Wenk, Art Markham and Matt Holloway. Cinematography was handled by Ben Davis, editing by Chris Lebenson and Craig Wood, and music composed by Benjamin Wallfish together with Evgeny and Sasha Galperine. The budget was estimated between $110 million and $130 million. Principal photography took place in locations including London, Glasgow, and Iceland. The film is in English, made in the United States, and runs approximately 127 minutes. In terms of cast, Aaron Taylor Johnson stars as Sergei Kravenov/Kraven. Russell Crowe takes on the role of Nikolai Kravenov, the father. Ariana DeBose plays Calypso Ezeli. Fred Heckinger portrays Dmitri Kravenov/Chameleon. Alessandro Nivola is cast as Alexei Sitsevic/Rhino. Christopher Abbott plays the Foreigner. Additional cast members include Murat Seven as Omer Özdemir, a Turkish assassin, Yuri Kolokolnikov as Semyon Korny, a Russian crime lord, Tom Reed as Bert, Rhino's second-in-command, Masha Vasyukova as Kraven's mother, and Guillaume Delaunay as Mofo, Kraven's large cellmate. Marketing for the film included the debut of first footage at CinemaCon in April 2022. The first official trailer was showcased at Sony's panel in April 2023, a trailer leaked on June 19, 2023, with a red band version released publicly that same day. A second trailer followed in August 2024, featuring the song, "The Man Comes Around," by Johnny Cash. To boost interest, Sony released the first 8 minutes of the film on its YouTube channel on December 2, 2024. The film was released theatrically in the United States on December 13, 2024. It later became available for digital purchase and rental on January 14, 2025, and a Blu-ray/4K home media release followed on March 4, 2025. Streaming rights were expected to arrive on Netflix around April 2025. In terms of box office performance, the film grossed only around $62 million worldwide against the large production budget, making it a commercial disappointment. Critics were harsh. The Rotten Tomatoes critic score sat in the low teens, approximately 14%, 15%. Opinions praised the performances of Taylor Johnson and Crow and the physical action sequences, but widely criticized the screenplay, character development, CGI creature design and the tonal inconsistency. One reviewer described it as, "a so-so character in a so-so film, the superhero revival is as far away as ever." Many critics felt that the film failed to deliver what fans expected from a character as iconic as Kraven. As for significance, this film holds the status, at the time of its release, of being the sixth installment in the Sony Spider-Man universe, SSU, and was widely reported to be the last planned live-action film in that particular shared universe slate, though Sony later clarified they had never strictly established a connected narrative universe. Director Shander and actor Taylor Johnson had both expressed openness to a sequel based on the comic storyline Kraven's Last Hunt and a crossover with Spider-Man, but due to the film's underperformance, future plans appear uncertain. In conclusion, Kraven the Hunter attempts to retell the origin and moral descent of a complex anti-hero/villain figure, how a man tortured by family legacy, survival trauma, and a transformative encounter with nature becomes a predator of predators. It attempts to root the story in raw emotional conflict and physical transformation, but its execution was met with critical and commercial resistance. The actors, director, and production values were all high-profile, yet the narrative cohesion and world-building seemed to fall short, leaving the film as an ambitious but flawed entry in the superhero genre. Kraven the Hunter is a 2024 American superhero film produced by Columbia Pictures in association with Marvel Entertainment, directed by J.C. Shander and written by Richard Wenk, Art Markham, and Matt Holloway. The movie is based on the iconic Marvel Comics character Kraven the Hunter, a formidable antagonist in Spider-Man lore. Known for its dark, visceral tone, the film serves as an origin story that explores the life of Sergei Kravenov, a man who transforms from a troubled youth into the ultimate hunter. The story traces his childhood in a harsh, violent environment under the rigid control of his father, Nikolai Kravenov, a powerful and ruthless crime lord. From an early age, Sergei and his half-brother Dmitry are groomed to inherit their father's criminal empire, a process that is both emotionally and physically punishing. The tragic death of their mother sets the stage for a grim upbringing, one that involves violent hunting lessons meant to instill survival skills and a ruthless sense of strength. It is during a pivotal hunting trip in Africa, where Sergei encounters a formidable lion, that his character begins to take shape. He is severely injured during the hunt, yet survives an encounter that would define his later identity. This early trauma, combined with the death of his mother and the cruelty of his father, pushes Sergei toward a transformative path that is both literal and metaphorical. Sergei's transformation begins when he is healed by Calypso, a mystic figure who imparts a serum with extraordinary powers, reminiscent of voodoo traditions. This serum grants him enhanced physical abilities, heightened senses, and superhuman agility, traits that allow him to become more than human. As Sergei matures, he develops a moral code that diverges sharply from his father's merciless ways. Rejecting the life of cold-blooded killing, he retreats to a sanctuary in Russia that once belonged to his mother, where he trains his mind and body to become a protector of wildlife. In this secluded environment, he learns to channel his abilities toward hunting poachers and criminals, embracing a philosophy that blends survival instincts with a personal sense of justice. This period is critical in shaping Sergei into Kraven, a character who walks the line between heroism and villainy, reflecting the duality of his upbringing and his powers. 16 years later, Kraven emerges as a legendary hunter whose exploits have become urban myth. Known for his extraordinary skill and almost supernatural capabilities, he intentionally lands himself in prison as part of a calculated plan, aware that this move will set in motion a series of events that will test his abilities and moral resolve. Meanwhile, his half-brother Dmitry becomes embroiled in a dangerous situation when he is kidnapped by Alexei Sitsovic, also known as Rhino, a villain who has undergone an experimental procedure that gives him rhinoceros-like powers. Rhino's brutal methods are complemented by the interventions of a mysterious assassin known as the Foreigner, whose mastery of neurotoxins and stealth complicates Kraven's plans. The confrontation with these adversaries forces Kraven to confront not only external threats but also his own internal struggles, particularly the lingering influence of his father and the legacy of violence that has defined his early life. Kraven's journey is marked by moments of intense physical confrontation and emotional introspection. He escapes imprisonment and, with Calypso's assistance, survives attacks that would overwhelm any ordinary human. Calypso's guidance and her mystical abilities become a recurring motif in the film, highlighting the intersection of human determination and supernatural intervention. The climax of the film is both spectacular and symbolic, as Kraven employs natural forces, including stampeding buffalo, to trap Rhino and subvert the expectations of his enemies. This battle is not only a test of strength but also a demonstration of Kraven's ingenuity, patience, and tactical intelligence, traits that are as defining as his physical prowess. Following these events, Kraven confronts his father, Nikolai, whose manipulation and schemes serve as the ultimate challenge to Kraven's ethical and emotional boundaries. By sabotaging his father's hunt, Kraven asserts his autonomy and symbolically severs ties with the oppressive legacy that has haunted him, embracing a new identity rooted in self-determination and mastery over life and death. The film features a stellar ensemble cast led by Aaron Taylor-Johnson as Sergei Kravenov, portraying the nuanced evolution of a complex character who oscillates between hero and anti-hero. Russell Crowe embodies Nikolai Kravenov, exuding a menacing presence that underscores the themes of familial control and generational trauma. Fred Heckinger appears as Dmitry Kravenov, whose arc as the half-brother and eventual antagonist known as Chameleon provides a compelling counterpoint to Kraven's journey. Ariana DeBose portrays Calypso, the mystical healer and moral compass who guides Sergei through his transformation. Alessandro Nivola's portrayal of Rhino adds a layer of physical threat and represents the extreme consequences of unchecked experimentation and villainy. Christopher Abbott as the Foreigner embodies stealth, cunning, and the shadowy dangers that accompany Kraven's path. The casting also includes younger versions of key characters, such as Levi Miller as young Sergei and Billy Barrett as young Dmitry, which enriches the narrative by providing a visual and emotional connection to the formative events of their lives. Released theatrically on December 13, 2024, in the United States, Kraven the Hunter was later made available for digital download on January 14, 2025, with home media releases scheduled for March 4, 2025. Despite high production values, the film underperformed at the box office, earning approximately $62 million worldwide against a production budget of roughly $110 to $130 million. Critics largely panned the film for its derivative storytelling, lack of emotional depth, and inconsistent visual effects. Rotten Tomatoes assigned it a score of 15%, while audiences gave it mixed reviews, reflected in a CinemaScore rating of C. Nevertheless, the film found a second life on streaming platforms, particularly Netflix, where it garnered attention and climbed the streaming charts, demonstrating a delayed but notable engagement with audiences seeking a darker, more grounded superhero narrative. Kraven the Hunter holds significance within the broader Sony Spider-Man universe, SSU, providing a darker, R-rated exploration of a lesser-known character who has traditionally been framed as a villain. Unlike typical superhero films that focus on saving the world, this narrative delves into the psychology of hunting, power, and legacy, exploring the moral ambiguities of Kraven's choices and the ethical challenges inherent in wielding extraordinary abilities. Themes of family, betrayal, survival, and self-actualization permeate the story, offering audiences a layered narrative that juxtaposes brutality with introspective growth. The film's visual style, heavily featured in its official trailer, emphasizes grounded action sequences, visceral encounters with animals and adversaries, and a cinematic realism that sets it apart from the brighter, more fantastical aesthetics commonly associated with superhero cinema. The use of practical effects combined with computer-generated imagery allows for a tangible sense of danger, particularly in the hunting and combat sequences, further immersing viewers in Kraven's world. In analyzing the broader implications of the film, Kraven the Hunter presents a meditation on the idea of power and its ethical use. The character's transformation from a victim of familial and societal pressures into a self-determined force reflects broader human themes of overcoming adversity and asserting control over one's destiny. The interactions with his half-brother, father, and mystical guide Calypso underscore the narrative tension between inherited legacy and personal choice, while the antagonistic forces of Rhino and the Foreigner provide external reflections of the internal conflicts Kraven faces. The film's narrative trajectory demonstrates the cyclical nature of violence and the challenges of breaking free from patterns of aggression, making it a study not just in action but in human psychology and ethical decision-making. Ultimately, Kraven the Hunter is an ambitious, dark, and complex addition to the superhero genre. While commercially and critically it faced challenges, it offers a deep exploration of character, morality, and the consequences of power, framed within the visually striking and narratively compelling journey of a man who becomes the ultimate hunter. The film's detailed attention to character development, thematic resonance, and immersive world-building makes it a noteworthy example of the potential for superhero narratives to transcend conventional tropes and engage audiences in more nuanced storytelling. Kraven the Hunter is a cinematic exploration of darkness, survival, and the blurred lines between morality and power, situated within Sony's Spider-Man universe. The 2024 film offers a fresh, R-rated interpretation of the Marvel Comics antihero, Sergei Kravenov, a character whose complex psychology and moral ambiguity make him far more than a conventional villain. From its very inception, the film sought to delve into the nuanced evolution of Kraven, tracing the roots of his character from a traumatized child into the master hunter known in urban legend. The creative team, including director J.C. Shander and writers Richard Wenk, Art Markham, and Matt Holloway, envisioned a narrative that was grounded, emotionally resonant, and visually intense, contrasting sharply with the bright, action-driven tone of most superhero films. The movie's production, led by Columbia Pictures in association with Marvel Entertainment, was marked by an emphasis on practical effects, location-based shooting, and a careful balance of realism with comic book-inspired spectacle. The casting of Aaron Taylor Johnson in the titular role reflects this vision, with Taylor Johnson tasked with conveying both physical prowess and the psychological complexity of a man shaped by trauma and choice. Sergei Kravenov's childhood is a central element of the narrative, establishing the foundation for his later transformation into Kraven. Born into a family dominated by his father, Nikolai Kravenov, Sergei's early life is defined by strict discipline, emotional neglect, and exposure to extreme violence. Nikolai, a figure of unyielding authority and ruthless ambition, imposes a regime of physical training and survival lessons upon his sons, intending to mold them into successors capable of maintaining his criminal empire. The film depicts these early experiences in vivid detail, highlighting the psychological tension inherent in a household where love is conditional and strength is equated with survival. Young Sergei and his half-brother Dmitri are both forced to endure grueling exercises and life-threatening scenarios, which are intended not merely as tests of skill but as mechanisms of control and intimidation. This upbringing instills in Sergei a complicated relationship with power, authority, and familial loyalty, all of which serve as recurring themes throughout his adult life. The death of Sergei's mother serves as the first major catalyst in his personal journey. Her absence amplifies the oppressive nature of Nikolai's regime, leaving Sergei and Dmitri vulnerable to manipulation and harsh lessons disguised as life preparation. The loss is portrayed with subtle emotional undertones that resonate throughout the narrative, influencing Sergei's internal struggles with morality, justice, and empathy. It is against this backdrop that the African hunt, a key formative experience, takes place. As a young boy, Sergei is taken by his father on a big game hunting expedition, ostensibly to teach him the fundamentals of tracking, patience, and lethal precision. The hunt is more than a mere adventure, it is a calculated test designed to expose Sergei to danger, fear, and the consequences of hesitation. During this expedition, Sergei confronts a lion, an encounter that becomes symbolic of his personal trials and the externalization of his internal battles. The narrative carefully emphasizes the physical and emotional stakes of this encounter. Sergei is injured, his survival is uncertain, and the experience leaves a lasting psychological imprint that will influence his later decisions as an adult. The lion, majestic and powerful, functions as both an adversary and a mirror for Sergei's potential, representing a primal force that he must overcome yet ultimately respect. The African hunt also functions as a narrative device to examine the complexities of morality and ethical judgment in the context of survival. While his father perceives the hunt as an opportunity to instill ruthlessness, Sergei develops an early understanding of the weight of life, the balance between predator and prey, and the significance of restraint. These lessons, although born of trauma and coercion, are instrumental in shaping the core philosophy that Kraven will later embody, the blending of strength, skill, and a selective moral compass. The cinematic depiction of these early moments employs a combination of naturalistic cinematography, immersive sound design, and carefully choreographed action to convey the tension, danger, and psychological intensity of Sergei's formative experiences. The juxtaposition of the African wilderness with the oppressive presence of his father creates a visual and thematic contrast that underscores the central conflict of the narrative, the struggle between inherited brutality and the quest for self-defined purpose. This period of Sergei's life also introduces recurring motifs and symbols that persist throughout the film, such as the lion's pelt, which later becomes an emblem of his identity as Kraven. The encounter's psychological consequences are depicted with precision, illustrating the interplay between fear, courage, and emerging self-awareness. In addition, the presence of Calypso, introduced later as a mystical figure with healing and transformative powers, is foreshadowed in these early sequences. While she does not intervene during the African hunt, the narrative establishes her eventual role as a guide and catalyst for Sergei's transformation, linking the mystical elements of the story to the grounded experiences of childhood trauma and survival training. Kraven the Hunter is a visually ambitious entry into Sony's Spider-Man universe, featuring a complex protagonist whose story blends elements of human vulnerability with the heightened abilities of a larger-than-life figure. The film explores the psychological and physical evolution of its central character, Sergei Kravenov, in a way that emphasizes both his intense personal journey and his environment's impact on shaping him. Rather than presenting a traditional superhero story with clear-cut moral lines, the film positions its lead as a multifaceted figure, caught between the influence of familial pressures, societal expectations, and his own emerging sense of purpose. From the outset, audiences are immersed in a richly constructed world that juxtaposes the urban landscapes of major cities with remote, untamed natural settings, highlighting the contrast between human civilization and the raw, primal aspects of nature that mirror Kravenov's inner transformation. The cinematography throughout the film demonstrates a careful attention to tone, lighting, and scale, effectively capturing both the grandiose and intimate moments of the narrative. Sweeping landscapes provide a backdrop for sequences of tension and strategy, while tightly framed shots highlight the characters' psychological states. The filmmakers also make use of subtle visual motifs and recurring imagery to reinforce the thematic tension between humanity and the animalistic instincts Kravenov begins to harness. Costume design plays a key role, with each wardrobe choice reflecting character development, status, and alignment, while practical and digital effects combine to make the action sequences feel grounded despite their heightened reality. The film balances practical stunts with visual effects to maintain a sense of authenticity, particularly in sequences involving Kravenov's physical prowess and agility. The score, composed by Benjamin Wallfisch alongside Evgeny and Sasha Galperine, underscores the film's emotional and narrative beats without overwhelming the visuals. It incorporates orchestral arrangements, percussive intensity, and motifs that align with character psychology, enhancing the sense of suspense and grandeur. The sound design further immerses viewers, blending environmental audio, subtle creature cues, and the impact of action sequences to heighten realism and tension. Casting choices bring depth to the characters, with Aaron Taylor Johnson delivering a performance that embodies both the vulnerability and determination of the central figure. Supporting performances, including those by Russell Crowe and Ariana DeBose, provide additional layers of complexity, representing forces of authority, guidance, or opposition that shape the protagonist's journey. The ensemble cast effectively creates a world that feels populated with individuals whose motivations are distinct yet interwoven with the main narrative, allowing for interpersonal dynamics that drive the emotional stakes of the story. The production itself was ambitious in scope, with filming locations spanning multiple countries to achieve visual diversity and authenticity. Urban sequences were captured in cities known for their architectural character, while remote natural settings were selected to emphasize scale, isolation, and the elemental forces that influence the narrative. The integration of these locations with studio sets and soundstage work illustrates the filmmaker's commitment to creating a cohesive and immersive environment. Attention to detail extended to set design, props, and environmental storytelling, ensuring that each frame conveys a sense of place and supports the narrative progression. Marketing strategies for the film included early teasers, trailers, and behind-the-scenes features that showcased both the visual style and the character's transformation. Trailers highlighted key action sequences, hinted at the protagonist's internal conflict, and emphasized the moral ambiguity central to the story. Pre-release promotions focused on the film's distinct approach to the superhero genre, emphasizing its focus on character psychology, high-stakes conflict, and cinematic spectacle. Special events, including previews and selected screenings, were used to generate interest among both fans of the source material and general audiences. Upon release, the film was made available across theatrical, digital, and home media platforms. The approach to distribution reflected contemporary trends in media consumption, with simultaneous marketing campaigns designed to reach audiences in multiple formats. Streaming availability further expanded the potential audience, offering accessibility while maintaining engagement with traditional theatrical presentations. Box office performance and audience reception provided insights into the broader appeal of character-driven superhero narratives, highlighting both the strengths of cinematic craftsmanship and the challenges of balancing complex storytelling with genre expectations. Critically, the film was noted for its ambition, production design, and performances, while discussions around narrative pacing, thematic focus, and audience alignment sparked debate. Reviewers often cited the film's willingness to explore nuanced moral territory as both a distinguishing feature and a potential barrier for conventional superhero audiences. Fans and casual viewers engaged in discussions around character interpretation, visual style, and adherence to source material, illustrating the film's capacity to generate meaningful discourse beyond entertainment value. Thematically, Kraven the Hunter emphasizes the interplay between environment and identity, exploring how individuals are shaped by familial legacy, societal pressures, and internal drive. It raises questions about morality, power, and personal responsibility without resorting to oversimplified dichotomies of good versus evil. Through its focus on physicality, strategy, and psychological tension, the film positions its protagonist as both relatable and larger than life, inviting audiences to examine the nature of transformation, consequence, and choice. Overall, Kraven the Hunter represents a deliberate effort to expand the superhero genre into areas of character study, moral complexity, and cinematic scope. By integrating strong performances, technical proficiency in cinematography and effects, and thematic depth, the film offers a layered narrative experience that seeks to resonate on both emotional and visual levels. While its reception may vary across audiences, its contributions to the exploration of anti-hero narratives and the potential for morally complex storytelling within mainstream cinematic universes are notable. The production demonstrates how large-scale genre filmmaking can balance spectacle with introspection, providing a model for future projects that aim to merge commercial appeal with narrative sophistication. Kraven the Hunter, released in 2024, is an ambitious entry in Sony Pictures' Spider-Man universe, representing a bold attempt to tell a superhero origin story with a darker, morally complex protagonist. Based on the Marvel Comics character Sergei Kravenov, better known as Kraven, the film offers a nuanced exploration of power, identity, and family dynamics, while simultaneously delivering intense action sequences and cinematic spectacle. Directed by J.C. Shander, whose previous works have emphasized character-driven storytelling, the film was brought to life through the collaboration of screenwriters Richard Wenk, Art Markham, and Matt Holloway, and produced by heavyweights Avi Arad, Matt Tolmach, and David Hausholter. With cinematography that spans the urban jungles of London, the icy landscapes of Russia, and the raw African wilderness, the film visually underscores the duality of Sergei's life as both a man and a predator. The musical score, crafted by Benjamin Wallfish and the Galperine duo, reinforces the emotional intensity and tension throughout the narrative, weaving together orchestral and modern sound elements. From its opening moments, Kraven the Hunter establishes a tone of raw realism punctuated by mystical undertones. The story begins with young Sergei and his half-brother Dmitri, whose lives are irrevocably changed by the death of their mother. This formative loss shapes Sergei's emotional compass and instills in him a drive for both justice and personal honor. Their father, Nikolai Kravinov, a complex and morally ambiguous figure, introduces the boys to the brutal realities of hunting through a fateful trip to Africa, where they are tasked with hunting the legendary lion Tsar. Here, the film's narrative tension crystallizes. Sergei's refusal to kill Tsar demonstrates a respect for life that sharply contrasts with his father's ruthless pragmatism. This moral divergence sets the stage for the overarching familial conflict that permeates the story. The encounter with Tsar is not merely a physical trial, it serves as a symbolic initiation, forcing Sergei to confront mortality, courage, and the limits of his own agency. Sergei's attack by Tsar and subsequent rescue by Calypso introduces an element of mysticism that is woven throughout the film. Calypso's serum, derived from her grandmother's knowledge of ancient remedies, not only heals Sergei's wounds but awakens latent abilities, signaling the transformation from boy to predator. These abilities, enhanced strength, agility, reflexes, and heightened senses, mark the beginning of his evolution into Kraven. The interplay between mystical empowerment and real-world skill acquisition highlights the film's commitment to blending superhero tropes with grounded character development. Unlike typical origin stories, Kraven the Hunter portrays this transformation as both physically taxing and psychologically challenging, ensuring that audiences witness the full arc of Sergei's maturation. As the narrative progresses, the film delves into Sergei's development into a morally complex antihero. He rejects his father's path of merciless hunting and retreats to his mother's sanctuary in Russia, where he hones his powers and refines his personal code. The sanctuary functions not only as a training ground but also as a symbolic refuge from his father's ideology. It is here that Sergei becomes a skilled tracker and strategist, embodying the duality of hunter and protector. His ethical framework evolves. While he employs violence and tactical cunning to neutralize criminals, he maintains a respect for life and a reverence for the natural world. This ethical ambiguity becomes central to his identity and distinguishes him from other characters within the Spider-Man universe. The film's plot intricately weaves familial dynamics with high-stakes action. Nikolai Kravinov is not merely an obstacle, he is a narrative device that forces Sergei to reconcile his personal ethics with the realities of a dangerous world. Dmitri's presence adds emotional depth, serving as both a mirror and a foil to Sergei's journey. Their half-brotherly bond is tested by external threats, most notably the kidnapping of Dmitri, which functions as a narrative catalyst for Sergei's transformation into a fully realized hunter. These personal stakes are compounded by the presence of formidable antagonists. Alexei "Rhino" Sitsovic embodies raw physical power and represents the literal manifestation of unchecked aggression. His rhino-like strength and near-invulnerability challenge Kraven's abilities and force him to rely on strategy, ingenuity, and cunning rather than brute force. The Foreigner, employing ocular hypnosis, introduces an element of psychological danger, highlighting the multiple dimensions of threat Kraven must navigate. Aaron Taylor Johnson's performance as Kraven is central to the film's emotional impact. He portrays the character with a balance of physical intensity and nuanced vulnerability, allowing audiences to empathize with a figure who could easily be perceived as a cold-blooded predator. Russell Crowe's Nikolai Kravinov exudes authority and menace, encapsulating the complex dynamic between father and son. Fred Heckinger as Dmitri captures both innocence and resentment, illustrating the tension inherent in their shared history. Ariana DeBosa's Calypso adds mystique and moral guidance, serving as both mentor and enigma, while Alessandro Nivola's Rhino and Christopher Abbott's Foreigner provide memorable antagonistic forces that test Kraven in both physical and ethical terms. The supporting cast, including Murat Seven, Yuri Kolokolnikov, Tom Reed, and Masha Vasyukova, enrich the narrative, adding layers to the social and criminal landscapes in which Kraven operates. From a production standpoint, the film demonstrates a commitment to immersive realism. Filming locations were chosen for their ability to convey authenticity, from the vast savannas of Africa to the icy Siberian forests, to the gritty streets of London and urban Russia. The production team employed a combination of practical effects, CGI, and advanced cinematographic techniques to capture both the intimate moments of character interaction and the grandeur of large-scale action sequences. The Lion Tsar, a critical symbolic and narrative element, was rendered using a combination of trained animal footage and CGI, ensuring both realism and safety. The choreography of fight sequences emphasizes strategy and brutality, reflecting Kraven's intelligence and predatory instincts. The musical score complements these visual elements, shifting seamlessly from tense orchestral compositions during confrontations to subtle, evocative motifs during introspective moments. The film's release history reflects both the challenges and ambitions of a modern blockbuster. Originally slated for an earlier release, Kraven the Hunter experienced delays due to production reshoots and external factors such as the SAG-AFTRA strike. It premiered theatrically in the United States on December 13, 2024, followed by digital availability on January 14, 2025, and Blu-ray/4K UHD release on March 4, 2025, with Netflix streaming commencing on March 13, 2025. Marketing campaigns included red band trailers emphasizing the film's R-rated intensity, promotional tie-ins, and strategic early releases of key sequences to generate anticipation. Despite these efforts, box office returns were underwhelming, with the film grossing approximately $62 million worldwide against a substantial production budget. Critical reception highlighted the film's visual style and performances while critiquing narrative pacing and cohesion. Analysts noted that the film's ambition in character exploration may have conflicted with audience expectations for a traditional superhero action experience. Comparatively, the film diverges from the original comic storylines in several ways. In the comics, Kraven is primarily depicted as a villain obsessed with defeating Spider-Man, often employing elaborate hunting schemes and exhibiting a strict code of honor. The film reimagines him as an anti-hero, focusing on personal growth, ethical dilemmas, and familial conflict rather than direct confrontations with Spider-Man. This narrative choice allows for deeper exploration of Kraven's internal motivations and moral philosophy, emphasizing themes of respect for life, honor, and the consequences of power. Dimitri's portrayal as a potential shapeshifter alludes to the comic book character Chameleon, adding an element of continuity while also expanding the film's narrative possibilities. Calypso's mystical role in the film reflects her comic counterpart's association with voodoo and sorcery, though the film emphasizes her role as mentor and catalyst for Kraven's transformation. Fan and critic reactions reveal a spectrum of perspectives. Many praised the film's ambition, visual style, and character-focused narrative, appreciating the exploration of moral ambiguity rarely seen in superhero cinema. Others criticized the pacing, noting that extended character backstories occasionally slowed the momentum of action sequences. Discussions on social media highlighted Aaron Taylor-Johnson's compelling performance, the chemistry between Kraven and Calypso, and the complexity of the father-son dynamic as particular strengths. Critics also analyzed the film's treatment of violence, noting that the R-rated intensity was both a draw for mature audiences and a limiting factor for broader commercial appeal. The divergence from traditional Spider-Man universe narrative sparked debate about Sony's direction for its standalone character films, with some viewers expressing excitement for more morally complex storytelling and others longing for a more interconnected superhero experience. Thematically, Kraven the Hunter interrogates identity, legacy, and the nature of morality. Sergei's evolution from a conflicted boy to a skilled hunter is intertwined with questions of right and wrong, familial obligation, and the ethical use of power. Symbolism is pervasive, the recurring imagery of lions, wild landscapes, and hunting rituals underscores Kraven's connection to nature and his personal code, while urban environments reflect the human moral landscape he navigates. The film's exploration of familial legacy is particularly poignant, highlighting how parental influence and sibling relationships shape identity, ethical choices, and the understanding of power. These thematic elements elevate the narrative beyond typical action fare, inviting audiences to reflect on the complexities of justice, honor, and personal growth. In analyzing the film's technical achievements, attention must be given to its visual effects, practical stunts, and sound design. Action sequences are meticulously choreographed, with a focus on tension, timing, and strategic combat. The visual effects team seamlessly integrates CGI with live-action sequences, creating believable animal interactions, environmental hazards, and superhuman feats. Sound design and music work in tandem to heighten emotional impact, using motifs to signify character presence, danger, and moral tension. The editing emphasizes rhythm and pacing, balancing the need for action with moments of introspection, resulting in a cinematic experience that is both engaging and thematically resonant. Ultimately, Kraven the Hunter is a complex and layered film that attempts to redefine superhero origin stories through a morally nuanced lens. While it experienced commercial challenges and divided critical reception, its ambition in storytelling, character development, and visual execution is noteworthy. By blending visceral action with psychological depth, the film provides a unique perspective on heroism, villainy, and the ethical dilemmas inherent in power. Kraven emerges not merely as a predator or villain, but as a fully realized character grappling with identity, morality, and legacy in a world that tests both his physical prowess and his ethical convictions. Kraven the Hunter is a 2024 American superhero film produced by Sony Pictures and positioned as a standalone installment within the Spider-Man universe. It is based on the iconic Marvel Comics character Sergei Kravenov, known widely as Kraven, a figure defined by his obsession with hunting, his personal code of honor, and his complex relationship with morality. Directed by J.C. Shander, whose previous films have often combined intense character study with high-concept narratives, the film is a darkly ambitious exploration of the origin and psyche of one of Spider-Man's most enigmatic antagonists. The screenplay, co-written by Richard Wenk, Art Markham, and Matt Holloway, balances visceral action with intricate character arcs, while producers Avi Arad, Matt Tolmach, and David Hausholter bring decades of experience in translating comic book mythology to the cinematic realm. The film was scored by Benjamin Wallfish alongside Evgeny and Sasha Galperine, whose orchestral compositions, fused with modern electronic undertones, amplify both the tension and the emotional resonance of Sergei's journey. Cinematographically, the film spans the African savanna, the icy forests of Siberia, and the gritty streets of London and urban Russia, visually underscoring Kraven's dual existence as both a creature of nature and a man navigating human society. With a runtime of 127 minutes and a production budget estimated between $110 and $130 million, Kraven the Hunter represents a significant investment in both spectacle and narrative depth. The story opens in a raw, emotionally charged environment, establishing young Sergei's formative experiences. From his earliest scenes, the audience witnesses the profound impact of his mother's death, which not only shapes his emotional compass but also establishes the moral lens through which he evaluates the world. Sergei's half-brother Dmitri provides both companionship and a mirror to his own struggles, illustrating the varied ways in which loss and familial expectation can shape identity. Their father, Nikolai Kravenov, is a powerful and domineering figure who introduces the boys to the unforgiving world of hunting. The expedition to Africa, where they are tasked with tracking and killing the legendary lion Tsar, serves as both literal and metaphorical crucible. The tension between Sergei's respect for life and Nikolai's ruthless pragmatism is heightened in this opening act, emphasizing the foundational moral conflict that will define Kraven's later decisions. The sequence in which Sergei confronts Tsar is a masterclass in visual storytelling. Wide shots of the savannah convey scale and danger, while close-ups of Sergei's face communicate internal conflict and determination. When Tsar attacks, the combination of practical effects and CGI captures the immediacy of the threat, immersing the audience in a life-or-death struggle that foreshadows Sergei's transformation. Calypso's introduction shortly after this encounter adds a mystical dimension to the narrative. Portrayed by Ariana DeBose, Calypso serves as both healer and mentor, administering a serum derived from ancient knowledge that not only heals Sergei physically but awakens latent abilities. This early interplay between the physical and mystical underscores one of the film's recurring themes, the coexistence of raw human skill and transcendent capability. The serum accelerates Sergei's evolution, allowing him to exhibit heightened strength, agility, reflexes, and sensory perception. Unlike conventional superhero narratives where powers often appear suddenly and without consequence, the film painstakingly illustrates the toll these abilities take on Sergei's body and psyche, embedding realism into the superhero framework. Following his recovery, Sergei retreats to his mother's sanctuary in Russia. This sanctuary, nestled in a remote forest, is depicted with cinematography emphasizing isolation, serenity, and the weight of tradition. Here, Sergei trains rigorously, developing the hunting skills, strategic thinking, and moral code that will define Kraven. This section of the film dedicates significant time to character building, portraying sequences of solitary practice, survival tests, and philosophical reflection. The sanctuary scenes are interspersed with flashbacks to his childhood, drawing parallels between formative trauma and the shaping of his ethical framework. The juxtaposition of nature, quiet introspection, and the anticipation of future conflict establishes a compelling tension that drives the narrative forward. The film then transitions into Kraven's adult life, presenting him as a morally complex antihero. He targets criminals and corrupt individuals, often employing violence and calculated strategy, yet he maintains a clear sense of honor and respect for life. This moral ambiguity is central to his character and distinguishes him from other figures in the Spider-Man universe. One of the first major action sequences showcases Kraven infiltrating a high-security Russian prison to neutralize the crime lord Semyon Korny. The choreography in this sequence emphasizes intelligence and adaptability over brute strength. Kraven employs stealth, environmental manipulation, and timing, effectively subverting the expectations of both his enemies and the audience. Cinematographically, the use of tight corridors, dynamic camera angles, and selective lighting enhances tension and conveys Kraven's predatory prowess. Kraven's return to London and the kidnapping of Dmitri serves as the narrative catalyst for the film's climax. The city is depicted with a blend of gritty realism and cinematic flair, emphasizing urban danger and moral complexity. Dmitri's kidnapping forces Kraven into confrontation with Alexei "Rhino" Sitsovic, whose imposing physicality and experimental enhancements provide a formidable external challenge. Rhino's design, a blend of practical prosthetics and CGI augmentation, visually communicates both his power and his tragic humanity, maintaining narrative depth even within the spectacle of confrontation. The Foreigner, another antagonist, introduces psychological tension through the use of ocular hypnosis, creating sequences that blend action with cerebral challenge, as Kraven must navigate not only physical threats but perceptual manipulation and strategic deception. Kraven's confrontation with his father, Nikolai, is the emotional apex of the film. Russell Crowe's performance as Nikolai exudes menace and authoritarian control, creating a layered antagonistic presence that is both external and internal to Kraven's journey. The father-son dynamic is explored through dialogue, body language, and cinematic framing. Scenes in the Siberian wilderness juxtapose isolation with confrontation, symbolizing the stark choices Kraven must make in defining his identity separate from familial legacy. The eventual resolution, in which Kraven ensures that his father faces the consequences of his actions, serves as a thematic culmination of the film's exploration of morality, legacy, and justice. Throughout the narrative, the film continuously references and reinterprets source material from the comics. In contrast to the comics, where Kraven is often depicted primarily as a Spider-Man antagonist, the film emphasizes his personal evolution, moral code, and familial relationships. Dimitri's potential shape-shifting abilities nod to the comic book character Chameleon, establishing continuity while expanding narrative possibilities. Calypso's mystical interventions are drawn from her comic incarnation as a practitioner of voodoo and sorcery, though the film reinterprets her role to emphasize mentorship and catalyst for transformation. These adaptations reflect a conscious effort to create a grounded, character-focused narrative within the broader context of the Spider-Man universe, allowing audiences to engage with Kraven as a multifaceted protagonist rather than a one-dimensional villain. Action sequences are meticulously crafted, blending practical stunts with CGI enhancements. Notable sequences include the African lion hunt, Kraven's infiltration of the Russian prison, the urban chase in London, and the climactic confrontation with Rhino and the Foreigner. Each sequence is carefully designed to highlight Kraven's strategic thinking, physical prowess, and ethical decision-making. The cinematography employs wide establishing shots to convey scale, dynamic tracking shots for tension, and close-ups to capture emotional nuance. Sound design complements these visuals with layered effects, emphasizing environmental realism, the impact of physical confrontations, and subtle audio cues to enhance suspense. The musical score integrates orchestral motifs with electronic elements to mirror Kraven's internal struggle and the rhythm of the narrative, shifting between tension, reflection, and resolution. Fan and critical reception of Kraven the Hunter reveals a spectrum of engagement. While some praised the film for its ambitious character study, visual style, and intense performances, others criticized narrative pacing and cohesion. Social media discussions highlighted Aaron Taylor Johnson's nuanced portrayal of Kraven, the chemistry between Kraven and Calypso, and the layered portrayal of family dynamics as standout elements. Conversely, some critics noted that extended backstory sequences occasionally slowed the momentum of action-driven portions, potentially impacting broader audience engagement. The film's R-rated intensity, while praised for mature storytelling, also limited its appeal in comparison to more conventional superhero fare, highlighting the tension between artistic ambition and commercial expectations. Symbolism and thematic depth permeate the film. Lions, wild landscapes, and hunting rituals serve as recurring motifs, reinforcing Kraven's connection to nature and his personal code of honor. The juxtaposition of urban and natural environments reflects the duality of his existence, navigating both human society and primal instincts. Familial relationships, particularly the tension between Kraven, his father, and Dimitri, underscore the broader themes of legacy, moral responsibility, and identity formation. Kraven's ethical journey, balancing the necessity of violence with respect for life, offers a philosophical lens through which audiences can consider the consequences of power, choice, and personal code. The technical aspects of the film, visual effects, stunts, sound, and music, coalesce to create a fully immersive cinematic experience. Practical effects and CGI are integrated seamlessly, whether in Kraven's combat sequences, animal interactions, or environmental hazards. Sound design enhances tension and realism, while musical scoring aligns with both narrative pacing and emotional arcs. Editing strategically balances action and introspection, ensuring that the film's rhythm complements its thematic intentions. Ultimately, Kraven the Hunter stands as a complex and layered addition to the Spider-Man universe. Its exploration of morality, identity, family, and power elevates it above traditional superhero storytelling, offering audiences a morally nuanced, psychologically rich portrait of an iconic character. While commercial reception may not have met expectations, the film's ambition, attention to detail, and thematic depth secure its place as a noteworthy experiment in reimagining superhero narratives. Kraven emerges not merely as a predator or villain but as a fully realized antihero, navigating the intricate interplay between strength, morality, and legacy. By integrating spectacle, character study, and thematic resonance, the film provides a multidimensional perspective on heroism and villainy, challenging audiences to reconsider the boundaries between the two. Kraven the Hunter emerges as a significant cinematic endeavor within the landscape of contemporary superhero filmmaking, representing a fusion of technical expertise, ambitious narrative design, and complex character study. From its earliest conceptualization, the project sought to distinguish itself from conventional entries in the superhero genre by emphasizing not only the physical and visual spectacle associated with high-budget films of its kind but also the intricate psychological and moral frameworks that inform its central character. The choice of Aaron Taylor Johnson to embody the protagonist reflects a deliberate casting decision aimed at balancing charisma, intensity, and the capacity to convey nuanced emotional depth. His performance, alongside those of Russell Crowe and Ariana DeBose, forms the core of the film's engagement with its audience, anchoring the spectacle in the realm of character-driven storytelling. These casting choices signal the filmmaker's intention to appeal both to established fans of the source material and to a broader audience interested in cinematic experiences that extend beyond surface-level action sequences. From the earliest stages of production, the visual language of the film was carefully considered to create a distinctive aesthetic identity. Cinematographer Ben Davis brought to the project a sensibility informed by prior experience in high-profile action and fantasy films, emphasizing the interplay of light, shadow, and color to articulate emotional states and thematic undertones. Locations were meticulously chosen to reinforce narrative symbolism, with urban centers providing a sense of scale and societal complexity, while remote natural environments underscored themes of survival, instinct, and personal transformation. The integration of these locations with purpose-built sets allowed the filmmakers to maintain visual continuity, ensuring that transitions between environments felt organic and immersive. Production design encompassed architectural choices, environmental textures, and the careful curation of props, all contributing to the creation of spaces that resonate with authenticity while supporting the narrative's thematic concerns. The approach to action and movement within the film reflects a synthesis of choreography, stunt coordination, and digital augmentation. Practical stunts were prioritized to provide a tactile, visceral quality to physical sequences, allowing audiences to feel the weight, impact, and immediacy of the characters' movements. These sequences were complemented by visual effects that enhanced rather than replaced the tangible elements of performance, ensuring that the extraordinary abilities of the protagonist and supporting characters were presented in a visually compelling yet believable manner. The visual effects team employed a combination of photorealistic CGI, motion capture, and environmental simulations to create sequences that are both aesthetically striking and narratively coherent, highlighting the protagonist's interaction with both human and natural elements. Sound design and scoring were treated with equal precision. Benjamin Wallfish, in collaboration with Evgeny and Sasha Galperine, crafted a soundtrack that supports narrative pacing, emotional resonance, and thematic motifs without overwhelming the visual experience. Orchestral arrangements were combined with electronic textures and percussive elements to create a sonic landscape that mirrors the dualities present within the story, emphasizing tension, anticipation, and release. Sound effects, from environmental cues to subtle character-associated motifs, were meticulously layered to enhance audience immersion, reinforcing the film's commitment to creating a cohesive sensory experience. Marketing strategies for the film were multifaceted and reflective of contemporary trends in entertainment promotion. Early teasers and trailers were designed not only to showcase the visual and action-oriented aspects of the film but also to communicate its thematic ambitions, highlighting the complex moral and psychological dimensions of its characters. These materials were carefully curated to engage both fans familiar with the source material and new viewers, using cinematic language, pacing, and visual storytelling techniques that convey tone and style without revealing critical narrative elements. Special promotional events, previews, and selective screenings allowed for audience engagement and feedback, further informing the distribution strategy and promotional emphasis. The distribution plan was executed across multiple platforms, reflecting the evolving consumption patterns of global audiences. Theatrical release was complemented by strategic digital distribution, home media availability, and streaming accessibility, ensuring that the film reached viewers across a range of modalities. This approach underscores the producer's awareness of shifting market dynamics and the importance of maximizing audience reach while maintaining narrative and experiential integrity. Each platform release was supported by tailored marketing campaigns that emphasized aspects most relevant to the respective viewing contexts, from immersive theatrical spectacle to intimate at-home engagement. In terms of design, the film's costume and makeup departments worked closely with the director and cinematographer to develop visual identities that communicate character traits, thematic resonance, and narrative progression. Wardrobe choices were informed by a combination of source material fidelity, practicality for stunt and movement requirements, and symbolic representation of character evolution. Similarly, makeup and prosthetics were used to reinforce physicality, age, and experience, contributing to audience perception of character authenticity. These visual elements were further augmented by lighting, color grading, and digital post-production techniques, creating a unified aesthetic that reinforces narrative and emotional arcs. Audience reception, both pre- and post-release, highlighted the interplay between expectation and experience within the superhero genre. Anticipation for the film was generated through a combination of source material familiarity, star power, and the promise of narrative complexity. Post-release reactions reflected a diversity of perspectives, with discussions often centering on the balance between spectacle and substance, the effectiveness of character portrayal, and the integration of thematic concerns with action-oriented storytelling. Social media engagement, fan discourse, and critical analysis collectively illustrate the film's cultural footprint, demonstrating its capacity to provoke conversation and reflection even among those who may approach it primarily as entertainment. The technical aspects of the film's production were marked by a commitment to high standards across multiple domains. Camera work utilized a combination of traditional and digital techniques to create dynamic visual compositions, emphasizing both breadth and intimacy. Lighting design was employed not only to illuminate spaces but to create emotional resonance and guide viewer attention, accentuating narrative beats and thematic contrasts. Post-production processes, including editing, color grading, and sound mixing, were orchestrated to achieve cohesion, pacing, and narrative clarity, ensuring that the final product reflects both the artistic intent of the filmmakers and the expectations of contemporary audiences. After surviving the traumatic events of his youth, Sergei Kravenov begins the critical phase of his transformation into Kraven, a journey that blends mysticism, rigorous training, and the development of an ethical framework that sets him apart from his father and other antagonists. Central to this transformation is Calypso, a mysterious and enigmatic figure with knowledge of ancient healing practices and mystical serums. Calypso serves as both a mentor and a catalyst, providing Sergei with the tools to transcend ordinary human limitations. In a dramatic sequence, she administers a serum derived from esoteric knowledge, combining herbal, mystical, and experimental elements that grant Sergei enhanced physical abilities. These include superhuman strength, agility, reflexes, stamina, and heightened sensory perception. The serum is not merely a plot device to introduce superpowers, it symbolizes the intersection of human potential, mystical intervention, and ethical choice, reflecting a recurring theme in the film, that power without morality can be destructive, but guided power can define destiny. Following the administration of the serum, Sergei retreats to a remote sanctuary in Russia, a location imbued with personal significance as it once belonged to his mother. This sanctuary represents a physical and psychological refuge, a space where Sergei can distance himself from the oppressive influence of his father and the moral corruption of the criminal world. Within this environment, Sergei undertakes a disciplined regimen of physical training, hunting practice, and strategic skill development. The sanctuary sequences are meticulously crafted to show not just physical transformation but the evolution of character and philosophy. Sergei begins to internalize lessons from both his father's rigorous training and his own ethical reflections. He learns to track and hunt animals without unnecessary cruelty, to survive in extreme conditions, and to anticipate and manipulate the actions of others, skills that will later define him as the ultimate hunter. These years of training also serve to deepen Sergei's understanding of life, death, and the consequences of unchecked violence. While his father equated power with domination, Sergei develops a nuanced moral compass. He respects life, particularly that of animals and those who cannot defend themselves, but he will strike decisively against those who threaten the vulnerable. This ethical framework positions him as a vigilante figure whose methods are calculated, precise, and morally intentional. His development during this period is marked by discipline, reflection, and the gradual mastery of his extraordinary abilities. The narrative emphasizes that Kraven's transformation is not instantaneous, it is the result of years of deliberate practice, philosophical contemplation, and the integration of mystical enhancement with human intelligence and instinct. As Sergei reaches adulthood, he emerges from his sanctuary not only physically enhanced but psychologically prepared to navigate the complex and dangerous world outside. His return to the urban environment introduces him to new challenges, including the criminal networks that his father once controlled and the emerging threats posed by figures such as Alexei, Rhino, Sitzevik and the Foreigner. In these sequences, the film highlights Kraven's strategic mind, adaptability, and mastery of both hand-to-hand combat and survival tactics. He is depicted stalking adversaries through urban landscapes, employing tracking techniques learned in the wilderness, and using environmental awareness to turn seemingly mundane surroundings into tactical advantages. The choreography of these encounters underscores the realism and grounded nature of the film, emphasizing skill, intelligence, and resourcefulness over reliance on sheer power alone. A critical aspect of Kraven's early adult exploits involves his intentional incarceration in a Russian prison, a calculated move to draw out threats and manipulate events according to his strategic plan. This period tests not only his physical abilities but also his ethical boundaries and mental resilience. Within the prison, he encounters various forms of human cruelty, corruption, and moral ambiguity, all of which mirror his earlier experiences with his father. These sequences serve as a microcosm of the broader moral landscape that Kraven must navigate, highlighting the tension between instinctual survival and the deliberate exercise of moral judgment. The narrative carefully contrasts the prison environment with the sanctuary of his training years, illustrating how context shapes behavior and ethical decision-making. During this phase of the story, Kraven begins to confront the legacy of his father more directly. Nikolai Kravenov's influence extends beyond mere familial control, it shapes the criminal landscape that Kraven must negotiate and, eventually, challenge. The introduction of Rhino, a physically augmented villain created through scientific experimentation, and the Foreigner, a stealthy and ruthless assassin, further complicates the narrative by presenting adversaries who embody extremes of violence and ambition. Kraven's encounters with these figures are not only physical confrontations but also ethical tests, forcing him to navigate complex scenarios where choices have life-or-death consequences. The film emphasizes the strategic, almost chess-like nature of these engagements, demonstrating Kraven's evolution from a reactive youth into a proactive, morally conscious adult capable of manipulating circumstances to achieve justice as he defines it. Another significant element during this period is Kraven's growing reliance on and trust in Calypso, who serves as both guide and moral compass. Her interventions, particularly in moments of extreme danger or moral uncertainty, provide Sergei with a framework for decision-making that balances the instincts of a hunter with the ethical considerations of a protector. The interplay between mystical guidance and personal agency is a recurring motif, underscoring the film's central philosophical question: how should one wield extraordinary power in a world filled with moral ambiguity? The narrative suggests that while strength and skill are necessary for survival, ethical discernment and reflection are equally crucial to becoming a true master, both of oneself and of one's environment. Throughout Part 2, the film's visual style emphasizes realism and tactile engagement with the environment. Action sequences are grounded, utilizing practical effects, location shooting, and carefully choreographed combat to immerse the viewer in Kraven's experiences. The wilderness, urban landscapes, and prison environments are all depicted with a focus on texture, scale, and sensory immersion, reinforcing the narrative's emphasis on observation, awareness, and strategic thinking. Cinematography and sound design work in tandem to highlight the tension, danger, and psychological stakes of each scene, drawing viewers into Kraven's perspective and reinforcing the moral and ethical weight of his choices. By the conclusion of this developmental phase, Sergei Kravenov has fully embraced his identity as Kraven, the Hunter. He combines the physical enhancements granted by the serum, the strategic skills developed through rigorous training, and the ethical insights cultivated through reflection and guidance. This synthesis of body, mind, and moral philosophy establishes the foundation for the subsequent confrontations and narrative arcs that define the remainder of the film. Kraven is no longer merely a reactive figure shaped by external forces, he is an agent of his own destiny, capable of navigating complex ethical landscapes while executing precise and calculated actions against adversaries who challenge both his skills and his principles. Kraven the Hunter, 2024, is a seminal entry in Sony Pictures' Spider-Man universe, presenting an origin story for one of Marvel's most enigmatic characters, Sergei Kravenov, better known as Kraven. Unlike traditional superhero films that lean heavily on spectacle, this narrative seeks to explore the psychological, moral, and philosophical dimensions of a character caught between primal instincts and human ethics. Directed by J.C. Shander, with a screenplay by Richard Wenk, Art Markham, and Matt Holloway, the film's ambition lies in balancing visceral action with deep character study. Its production, led by Avi Arad, Matt Tolmach, and David Hausholter, reflects years of experience in adapting comic mythology while attempting a darker, more mature tone. The musical composition by Benjamin Wallfish, alongside Evgeny and Sasha Galperine, fuses orchestral gravitas with subtle electronic motifs to enhance both tension and emotional resonance. Cinematographically, the film transitions seamlessly from the vast African savanna to the icy forests of Siberia and the gritty streets of London and urban Russia, visually mirroring Kraven's duality as a predator of both humans and the wild. With a runtime of 127 minutes and a substantial production budget, the film embodies a calculated risk in pursuing a character-driven, R-rated superhero origin story. The narrative opens with the formative trauma of young Sergei Kravenov and his half-brother Dmitry, set against the backdrop of familial loss. The death of their mother establishes a psychological foundation that informs Sergei's moral compass and internal conflict. Their father, Nikolai Kravenov, is introduced as an imposing, morally complex figure whose authoritarian and often brutal methods create early tension. The family's journey to Africa to hunt the legendary lion Tsar functions as both literal and symbolic initiation. Wide establishing shots of the savannah, interspersed with tight, tension-filled close-ups of Sergei and the lion, underscore the scale and stakes of the hunt. The film's depiction of this encounter emphasizes ethical conflict. Sergei refuses to kill Tsar, demonstrating empathy and restraint, while Nikolai's insistence reflects a utilitarian, power-driven morality. When Tsar attacks Sergei, the filmmakers use a combination of practical effects and CGI to maintain realism while conveying danger, immediacy, and the nascent emergence of Sergei's latent abilities. The mystical dimension is introduced through Calypso, portrayed by Ariana DeBose, whose role combines mentorship, moral guidance, and a catalyst for Sergei's transformation. Calypso administers a serum derived from ancient, secret knowledge, which heals Sergei's injuries and awakens his latent physical potential. Unlike typical superhero narratives where powers manifest without consequence, Kraven the Hunter emphasizes the physical and psychological toll of these new abilities, illustrating his struggle to integrate strength, agility, and heightened senses into both combat and moral decision-making. Dialogues between Calypso and Sergei, such as her warning that power without control is a curse, foreshadow his internal struggle and set the thematic tone for the film. Following his recovery, Sergei retreats to his mother's sanctuary in Siberia, a remote and austere setting that becomes the crucible for his transformation into Kraven. Cinematography here emphasizes isolation, framing Sergei against snow-laden landscapes that symbolize both solitude and reflection. He undergoes rigorous physical training sequences that are meticulously choreographed to showcase the evolution of his predatory abilities, blending martial arts with wilderness survival skills. Each sequence is designed to highlight the discipline, intelligence, and strategic thinking that will define him as a hunter. Flashbacks to his childhood punctuate these sequences, reinforcing the psychological foundation of his moral and ethical choices. Kraven's adult life introduces him as a morally complex antihero, targeting criminals and corrupt individuals through calculated violence while maintaining a personal code of honor. One of the first major sequences depicts Kraven infiltrating a high-security Russian prison to eliminate crime lord Semyon Korny. The action sequence exemplifies his strategic prowess. He manipulates environmental hazards, employs stealth, and uses precise timing rather than sheer force. Close-up shots and tracking sequences emphasize Kraven's predatory awareness, while editing rhythmically balances tension with anticipation. Sound design accentuates each step, echo, and impact, immersing viewers in the immediacy of the hunt. Dialogue during this sequence, including Kraven's cold declaration, "The hunt begins when you least expect it," reinforces his predatory philosophy. Returning to London, the narrative escalates when Dmitry is kidnapped, creating a personal stake that propels the film's climax. The urban environment is rendered with a gritty realism that contrasts sharply with the wilderness sequences, reflecting Kraven's dual existence. The antagonists, Alexei, Rhino, Sitsovic and the Foreigner, challenge Kraven on multiple levels. Rhino's augmented physicality, a combination of practical prosthetics and CGI, embodies raw power and externalizes the challenges of moral restraint versus physical dominance. The Foreigner introduces psychological danger through ocular hypnosis, creating sequences where Kraven must navigate not only brute force but perceptual manipulation and strategy. Each confrontation is described in meticulous detail. In the streets of London, Kraven uses the urban environment to create traps, misdirect his opponents, and strategically isolate threats. During his battle with Rhino, sequences are designed to highlight both characters' strengths. Rhino relies on brute force and intimidation, while Kraven uses calculated agility, environmental manipulation, and anticipatory strikes. The Foreigner's sequences introduce tension through visual disorientation and optical effects, requiring Kraven to adapt rapidly. The filmmakers utilize high-speed cinematography, slow-motion sequences, and dynamic camera angles to create immersive intensity, while the score intensifies suspense with low-frequency orchestral undertones punctuated by sharp percussion. The climactic confrontation with Nikolai Kravenov in the Siberian wilderness serves as the narrative and thematic apex. Crow's performance exudes authoritarian menace, with dialogue such as, "You cannot escape the legacy you were born into," emphasizing the generational and moral stakes. Cinematic framing positions Kraven as both vulnerable and empowered, contrasting human fragility with predatory dominance. The resolution, in which Kraven ensures his father faces consequences for his choices, reinforces the film's central exploration of morality, legacy, and justice. Dimitri's presence and revelation of potential shape-shifting abilities nod to the comic book chameleon, further complicating Kraven's moral and familial journey while expanding narrative possibilities for future installments. The film's adaptation of comic elements balances fidelity with creative reinterpretation. In traditional comics, Kraven is often a Spider-Man antagonist with an obsession for proving himself as the world's greatest hunter. The film, however, repositions him as a complex antihero, exploring personal ethics, family dynamics, and identity, rather than direct confrontations with Spider-Man, Calypso's mystical interventions, Dimitri's latent abilities, and Rhino's augmented strength all serve to reinterpret comic archetypes while maintaining narrative cohesion and thematic resonance. Dialogue throughout reflects these adaptations, including philosophical exchanges such as Kraven's assertion, "Strength without honor is nothing but savagery," which crystallizes the film's moral center. Action sequences are not only thrilling but narratively meaningful. The African savanna hunt emphasizes strategic patience and ethical decision-making, the prison infiltration showcases ingenuity and planning, and the London urban confrontations blend strategy, improvisation, and physicality. Each sequence is designed to reflect the psychological state of Kraven, his moral code, and the ethical stakes of violence. Cinematography, sound, and editing converge to immerse the audience fully, balancing spectacle with character-driven storytelling. The musical score underscores these sequences with motifs that shift dynamically, signaling tension, introspection, and triumph. Fan and critical reception highlights both the ambition and challenges of the film. Praise focused on Aaron Taylor-Johnson's performance, the chemistry between Kraven and Calypso, and the moral complexity that distinguishes it from traditional superhero fare. Criticism often centered on pacing, narrative density, and the balancing of introspective sequences with action. Social media discourse explored the ethical questions raised by Kraven's decisions, his relationship with Dimitri, and the philosophical framing of violence and power. The R-rated intensity was recognized as both a narrative strength and a commercial limitation, restricting audience reach but enhancing thematic depth. Symbolism and thematic resonance permeate the film. Lions, forests, and hunting rituals serve as recurring motifs, reflecting Kraven's philosophical and moral grounding. Urban and natural environments juxtapose civilized society with primal instincts, reinforcing the duality of the character. Familial relationships underscore legacy and moral responsibility, framing Kraven's personal evolution within broader ethical considerations. The film's treatment of power, choice, and consequence invites audiences to engage with questions of morality, justice, and the complex interplay between human instinct and ethical reasoning. Technical achievements, including VFX, stunts, sound, and music, complement narrative and thematic elements. Sequences such as the climactic Siberian forest battle, the London rooftop chase, and the prison infiltration employ integrated CGI and practical effects, creating realistic animal interactions, environmental hazards, and superhuman feats. Sound design and orchestration heighten tension, while editing ensures rhythm and pacing that balance action with introspective character beats. Each technical choice supports the storytelling, immersing viewers in both spectacle and narrative. Integration within Sony's Spider-Man universe is subtly suggested through environmental cues, character references, and narrative arcs. The film positions Kraven as a standalone antihero with potential connections to other SSU characters, such as hints of Spider-Man's existence and foreshadowed conflicts with established villains. These narrative breadcrumbs allow for future storylines and sequels, expanding the universe without relying on direct crossover appearances. Dialogue and interactions subtly reinforce this connectivity, establishing Kraven as a figure whose personal narrative has broader implications for the shared cinematic universe. Potential sequels are foreshadowed through unresolved arcs, including Dimitri's latent powers, Calypso's ongoing influence, and the moral complexities Kraven continues to face. These narrative threads suggest explorations of sibling rivalry, ethical dilemmas in vigilantism, and encounters with other SSU characters. By establishing both character depth and world building, the film positions itself as the foundation for a series of character-driven narratives within the Spider-Man universe. Ultimately, Kraven the Hunter is a landmark in character-driven superhero storytelling, combining visceral action, philosophical inquiry, and psychological depth. Kraven emerges not simply as a predator or villain but as a fully realized antihero, navigating complex moral terrain while balancing human and animalistic instincts. The film's attention to cinematography, VFX, sound, music, and performance supports its ambition, creating a cohesive, immersive experience that challenges audiences to reconsider traditional definitions of heroism and villainy. By blending spectacle with introspection, it sets a new standard for nuanced superhero narratives, offering a mature, morally complex exploration of identity, legacy, and the cost of power. In the realm of visual storytelling, the integration of practical effects with computer-generated imagery played a central role in defining the cinematic identity of Kraven the Hunter. The filmmakers approached visual effects not as a replacement for traditional craftsmanship but as an augmentation, designed to enhance realism, scale, and narrative immersion. Complex sequences involving dynamic movement, environmental interaction, or the depiction of extraordinary abilities were carefully storyboarded to ensure coherence, believability, and emotional resonance. This meticulous planning allowed for a seamless blend of real-world stunts and digitally augmented sequences, producing a visual experience that is at once spectacular and grounded, preventing the audience from feeling alienated by overly artificial imagery. The collaboration between the visual effects team, stunt coordinators, and cinematography department underscores the film's holistic approach to action design, in which every element, camera angle, lighting, motion, and digital enhancement, serves a precise narrative or aesthetic purpose. Equally important to the film's success is the role of character design and performance. Each actor's physicality, movement style, and emotional expression were considered in tandem with costume and set design to communicate identity, motivation, and transformation. Subtle gestures, posture, and eye movement contribute to a nuanced portrayal of the protagonist and supporting characters, while costume textures, silhouette, and detailing reinforce narrative cues and audience perception. The interplay between actor performance and visual presentation is carefully calibrated to ensure that the characters feel both extraordinary and relatable, anchoring the fantastical elements of the story in human experience. This layered approach reflects an understanding of audience psychology and cinematic language, emphasizing the importance of embodiment in creating credible and engaging characters. Sound design and auditory texture are central to the immersive quality of the film. Beyond the musical score, environmental soundscapes, ambient effects, and character-specific auditory cues were meticulously layered to create depth and dimensionality. Subtle sonic motifs reinforce narrative themes and emotional undercurrents, while the manipulation of volume, spatialization, and frequency contributes to audience perception of scale and intensity. The integration of sound and music is designed to support storytelling, punctuate dramatic tension, and enhance immersion, ensuring that auditory elements are not merely supplementary but integral to the overall cinematic experience. In particular, sequences featuring heightened physical or emotional stakes are augmented with carefully constructed audio cues that underscore both narrative significance and audience engagement. Marketing and audience engagement strategies were informed by an understanding of contemporary media consumption patterns, emphasizing cross-platform visibility, community involvement, and the cultivation of anticipation. Early promotional material highlighted the film's visual style, technical innovation, and thematic ambition, targeting both existing fans of the source material and a wider audience seeking high-quality, character-driven entertainment. Social media campaigns, interactive content, and strategic partnerships allowed for direct engagement with viewers, creating a sense of participation and excitement in the pre-release phase. Teaser clips, behind-the-scenes features, and carefully curated interviews provided insight into production processes, creative choices, and the interpretive approach to the central character, fostering dialogue and speculation while preserving the narrative's core surprises. Distribution strategy reflects the recognition of the film as a multifaceted product capable of reaching audiences through multiple channels. Theatrical release served as the primary venue for immersive visual and auditory experience, leveraging large-format screens, sound systems, and controlled environments to maximize impact. Digital distribution complemented this approach, providing accessibility for audiences preferring home or mobile viewing while maintaining fidelity to cinematic presentation. Home media releases, including physical formats such as Blu-ray and 4K, were designed to provide collectors and enthusiasts with enhanced visual and auditory fidelity, supplemental features, and behind-the-scenes content, further enriching audience experience. Streaming availability expanded accessibility globally, allowing for broad engagement and sustained discussion, reflecting an understanding of modern audience behavior and the value of multimodal distribution. In addition to these elements, the film's approach to narrative pacing and structure plays a critical role in shaping viewer experience. Sequences are carefully constructed to balance moments of tension, reflection, and spectacle, creating a rhythm that maintains engagement while allowing thematic and emotional resonance to develop organically. The careful orchestration of scene transitions, temporal progression, and narrative layering ensures that the story unfolds in a manner that is both coherent and compelling, highlighting the interplay between character development, visual storytelling, and audience attention. This structural strategy reflects a sophisticated understanding of cinematic rhythm and the demands of genre filmmaking, emphasizing the importance of maintaining narrative cohesion without sacrificing spectacle. The collaborative nature of the film's production is evident in every aspect of its execution. Directors, writers, actors, cinematographers, production designers, costume designers, sound engineers, and visual effects artists worked in concert to achieve a unified vision. Regular communication, iterative development, and problem-solving across departments ensured that technical challenges were addressed without compromising artistic goals. This collaborative ethos facilitated innovation, encouraged creative experimentation, and fostered an environment in which individual contributions were harmonized into a cohesive final product. Such an approach underscores the complexity of modern large-scale filmmaking and highlights the interplay between artistry, technology, and organizational coordination. Audience response and critical engagement with the film have provided valuable insights into its cultural and commercial impact. Reception analysis indicates that viewers are increasingly attuned to the integration of narrative depth, character complexity, and technical excellence. Discussions surrounding the film often emphasize its innovative approaches to visual storytelling, sound design, and thematic exploration, illustrating an appetite for cinematic works that challenge conventional genre boundaries. Critiques also highlight areas for refinement, including pacing, narrative clarity, and alignment between audience expectations and creative ambition. These responses underscore the evolving landscape of audience engagement and the importance of balancing entertainment, artistry, and accessibility in contemporary filmmaking. The film's production timeline and project management illustrate the scale and complexity inherent in executing a major studio project. Pre-production phases included script development, storyboarding, location scouting, design planning, casting, and technical prototyping. Principal photography was conducted across multiple international locations, integrating practical sets with digital environments, and accommodating complex scheduling demands, stunt coordination, and technical requirements. Post-production encompassed editing, visual effects integration, sound mixing, color grading, and musical scoring, all conducted with rigorous quality control standards to ensure fidelity to creative intent. This extensive workflow reflects the coordination and planning necessary to deliver a high-quality cinematic product within the constraints of budget, schedule, and audience expectations. As Kraven fully embraces his identity as the master hunter, the narrative shifts into the high-stakes, action-driven segment of the film, where both physical prowess and ethical judgment are tested. The introduction of Alexei "Rhino" Sitsevic as the primary antagonist adds a layer of scientific and brute force conflict. Rhino, having undergone an experimental augmentation that grants him rhinoceros-like strength, durability, and aggression, embodies unrestrained violence, acting as a foil to Kraven's calculated precision and ethical awareness. The narrative uses Rhino not only as a physical threat but also as a narrative mirror, emphasizing what Sergei might have become had he surrendered entirely to his inherited brutality and the lust for power that defined his father's empire. The contrast between Kraven and Rhino is central to the film's exploration of morality, strategy, and the consequences of choices. While Rhino relies on raw force and intimidation, Kraven combines intelligence, foresight, and ethical restraint, demonstrating that true mastery lies in the synthesis of strength and wisdom. The Foreigner, a secondary antagonist, presents a more insidious threat. Skilled in stealth, assassination, and the use of neurotoxin, the Foreigner challenges Kraven not just physically but psychologically. Unlike Rhino's overt aggression, the Foreigner operates from the shadows, testing Kraven's ability to anticipate threats, read human behavior, and make morally complex decisions under pressure. Encounters with the Foreigner serve to highlight Kraven's growth as a strategist, showcasing his ability to combine instincts, training, and ethical considerations in navigating life-or-death scenarios. These confrontations underscore the recurring theme of duality. While physical combat can be mastered through training, ethical and psychological acumen requires deliberate reflection and moral courage. The adult confrontations with both Rhino and the Foreigner are staged with cinematic precision, employing a combination of practical effects, CGI augmentation, and immersive choreography. One of the most visually striking sequences involves Kraven luring Rhino into a stampede of buffalo, turning the environment into an active participant in the narrative. This sequence exemplifies Kraven's mastery of his surroundings, his strategic thinking, and his understanding of both predator and prey dynamics. The buffalo stampede is not merely a spectacle, it functions as a metaphor for Kraven's control over chaos, his ability to anticipate and manipulate forces larger than himself, and his evolution from reactive victim to proactive strategist. Similarly, the sequence involving the Foreigner's attempted assassination at Kraven's sanctuary combines suspense, tactical maneuvering, and a test of Kraven's moral boundaries, emphasizing his growth in both skill and judgment. The narrative simultaneously explores Kraven's unresolved relationship with his father, Nikolai Kravenov. Nikolai's manipulation, psychological games, and influence over his son's destinies serve as a continuous challenge to Kraven's autonomy and ethical framework. The confrontation with Nikolai represents both a literal and symbolic climax. Sergei must reconcile his past, confront the source of his trauma, and assert his independence from the shadow of his father's dominance. In a pivotal sequence, Kraven strategically sabotages his father's bear hunt, a demonstration of both cunning and ethical judgment. By allowing nature itself to act as the instrument of justice, Kraven avoids unnecessary bloodshed while asserting moral authority, symbolically severing the oppressive ties of familial legacy and claiming mastery over his own destiny. This act encapsulates the film's central philosophical question, the balance of power, morality, and personal agency in the exercise of extraordinary abilities. The culmination of the adult narrative sees Kraven fully embracing his identity. After defeating Rhino and neutralizing the Foreigner, he reflects on the ongoing consequences of his actions and the ethical framework he has adopted. His half-brother Dmitri, now revealed to possess shape-shifting abilities as the chameleon, represents the continuation of family legacy and moral ambiguity. Dmitri's assumption of control over the criminal empire, coupled with his accusation that Kraven is no different than Nikolai, presents a moral mirror and a narrative challenge. Kraven must navigate the tension between personal justice, ethical restraint, and the seductive allure of power. The exchange between Kraven and Dmitri highlights the enduring themes of legacy, choice, and identity, reinforcing the narrative's emphasis on self-determination as a measure of true mastery. Aesthetic and stylistic choices in these climactic sequences reinforce the narrative's grounding in realism and psychological tension. Cinematography emphasizes naturalistic lighting, dynamic camera movement, and immersive sound design to create a visceral experience of danger and moral complexity. Action sequences are carefully choreographed to balance spectacle with plausibility, demonstrating Kraven's skill and strategic thinking rather than relying solely on exaggerated superhuman feats. The contrast between the raw power of Rhino, the stealth and cunning of the foreigner, and Kraven's own measured, intelligent approach provides a layered depiction of conflict, strategy, and ethical decision-making. The symbolic resolution of the film, particularly the presentation of the lion's pelt to Kraven, marks the final stage of his transformation. The lion, which had loomed large in his childhood and symbolized both fear and potential, is now internalized as part of Kraven's identity. By donning the pelt, he embodies the synthesis of past experiences, ethical lessons, physical mastery, and strategic intelligence. This visual and narrative motif emphasizes the journey from victimhood to agency, from reactive existence to proactive mastery. The conclusion situates Kraven as a fully realized character whose skill, morality, and strategic acumen define him as the ultimate hunter, capable of navigating the moral and physical complexities of his world while maintaining his ethical framework. Part 3 also deepens the thematic exploration of the film. The confrontations with Rhino, the foreigner, and Nikolai are not only action set pieces but also allegories for internal psychological and moral struggles. Each adversary represents different aspects of power, morality, and ethical choice. Rhino embodies unchecked physical power and aggression, the foreigner represents stealth, deception, and moral ambiguity, and Nikolai embodies the oppressive legacy and manipulation of familial authority. Kraven's ability to confront and overcome these challenges reflects the synthesis of strength, intelligence, and ethical reasoning, underscoring the film's central thesis that true mastery requires the integration of skill, morality, and strategic foresight. By the end of these adult confrontations, Kraven has achieved a dual victory. He has neutralized external threats and resolved key internal conflicts related to family legacy and moral identity. The film closes with Kraven positioned as an autonomous agent, fully in control of his abilities, ethical compass, and strategic decisions. His emergence as the ultimate hunter is both literal, in terms of his skill and physical prowess, and symbolic, representing the culmination of a journey marked by trauma, reflection, ethical development, and the deliberate application of extraordinary abilities. The narrative thus blends intense action, psychological depth, and thematic resonance, creating a layered depiction of heroism, morality, and the consequences of choice within the framework of a superhero narrative. Kraven the Hunter is a 2024 American superhero action film produced by Columbia Pictures in collaboration with Marvel Entertainment, Arad Productions, and Matt Tolmach Productions. The film, distributed by Sony Pictures Releasing, is based on the iconic Marvel Comics character Sergei Kravenov, known as Kraven the Hunter. The character, originally introduced in the Spider-Man comics, has long been considered one of Spider-Man's most formidable adversaries due to his exceptional hunting skills, superhuman physical abilities, and obsession with capturing the ultimate prey. The film is directed by J.C. Shander, with a screenplay co-written by Richard Wenk, Art Markham, and Matt Holloway, and it represents a standalone story within Sony's Spider-Man universe, SSU, a cinematic universe developed separately from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The story begins with a young Sergei Kravenov and his half-brother Dmitri, who are raised under the strict and manipulative guidance of their father, Nikolai Kravenov, a ruthless crime lord. Following the death of their mother, the boys are exposed to a life of danger and moral ambiguity. Their father takes them on a big-game hunting trip in Africa, where Sergei encounters a legendary lion that he refuses to kill, demonstrating his innate empathy for the animal world. This act of defiance results in a brutal attack by the lion, leaving Sergei gravely injured. He is rescued by Calypso, a mysterious woman with knowledge of voodoo and traditional healing practices, who uses a secret serum to heal him and imparts symbolic guidance through a tarot card, the Strength card. This pivotal moment not only saves Sergei's life but also triggers the manifestation of his superhuman abilities, including enhanced strength, agility, reflexes, and a unique affinity with animals, setting him on the path to becoming Kraven the Hunter. As Sergei grows older, he increasingly distances himself from his father's criminal world. A confrontation with Nikolai, who coldly kills the lion Sergei spared, convinces him to flee to a sanctuary in Russia connected to his mother's legacy. There, Sergei begins to explore the extent of his powers and his moral code, focusing on hunting criminals rather than animals. Over time, Sergei fully embraces his identity as Kraven, transforming into a vigilante hunter with a reputation that becomes legendary among both criminals and law enforcement agencies. His methods are both violent and cunning, often leveraging his environment and instincts to gain the upper hand against his foes. The plot advances as Kraven deliberately infiltrates the prison system to confront Semyon Korny, a powerful crime lord. By orchestrating a scenario in which he is incarcerated, Kraven positions himself to dismantle Korny's empire from within, ultimately killing him and asserting his dominance as a vigilante. The narrative complexity increases with the introduction of Alexei Sitsevic, known as Rhino, who has undergone genetic enhancements to gain superhuman strength, and the Foreigner, a hypnotist and mercenary. Both antagonists serve as formidable obstacles, orchestrating elaborate schemes to trap Kraven and exploit his half-brother Dmitri as leverage. The film builds tension through meticulously choreographed confrontations and showcases Kraven's strategic intelligence and physical prowess. A major turning point in the story occurs when Dmitri is kidnapped. Kraven, together with Calypso, orchestrates a high-stakes rescue operation. Calypso demonstrates both courage and resourcefulness, using her mystical knowledge and the serum to save Kraven when he is incapacitated by neurotoxin darts. The climax features an ingenious use of environmental strategy, as Kraven manipulates a buffalo herd to defeat Rhino in a chaotic sequence, blending action with tactical brilliance. This sequence not only resolves the immediate threat but also reinforces Kraven's identity as a hunter who uses intellect and instinct as much as brute force. Following the resolution of these conflicts, Kraven confronts his father Nikolai in a Siberian forest, revealing the depth of the familial betrayal and manipulation that has shaped his life. The confrontation culminates with Kraven setting up his father to meet his demise at the hands of a bear, an act that symbolizes both poetic justice and Kraven's complex moral code. In the epilogue, Dmitri, who may possess shape-shifting abilities, rejects Kraven, highlighting the enduring tension between the brothers and underscoring the theme that the line between hunter and prey is often blurred. Kraven, now fully embracing his persona, dons a vest made from the skin of the lion he spared in his youth, cementing his identity as the ultimate hunter and leaving audiences with a powerful visual metaphor for his journey. The cast delivers compelling performances that elevate the narrative. Aaron Taylor Johnson portrays Sergei Kravinov with a nuanced balance of ferocity and vulnerability, capturing the character's internal struggle between his human instincts and predatory powers. Russell Crowe embodies Nikolai Kravinov, infusing the role with gravitas and menace that amplifies the familial conflict central to the story. Ariana DeBose as Calypso brings mysticism and emotional depth, acting as both a catalyst for Kraven's transformation and a moral anchor throughout the film. Fred Heckinger plays Dmitri Kravinov, whose complex relationship with Sergei adds tension and layers of intrigue. Alessandro Nivola's Rhino is depicted as a physically imposing adversary, while Christopher Abbott's Foreigner provides cerebral antagonism, demonstrating that Kraven's battles are as much mental as physical. The film's production emphasizes high-quality cinematography and visual effects, with Ben Davis serving as the director of photography and Chris LeBenzon and Craig Wood handling editing duties. The score, composed by Benjamin Wallfish alongside Evgeny and Sasha Galperine, blends orchestral and electronic elements to enhance the film's tension and underscore the emotional arcs of the characters. The choice of filming locations spans urban environments and remote natural settings, reinforcing the thematic contrast between Kraven's civilized surroundings and the primal instincts that drive him. The design of Kraven's costume and the film's visual language draw directly from comic book aesthetics while adapting them for a more realistic cinematic interpretation, balancing spectacle with grounded realism. Kraven the Hunter was theatrically released in the United States on December 13, 2024, followed by a digital release on January 14, 2025, and streaming on Netflix beginning March 13, 2025. Physical media, including Blu-ray and 4K UHD, became available in spring 2025. Despite the anticipation surrounding the film, it underperformed at the box office, grossing approximately $62 million worldwide against a production budget estimated at $110 to $130 million, resulting in a significant financial loss for Sony. Critical reception was largely negative, with critics citing a weak narrative, underdeveloped character arcs, and subpar visual effects as primary shortcomings. Audiences echoed these sentiments, with CinemaScore polling indicating a C grade, reflecting mixed reactions to the film's tone and execution. Critics also debated the viability of Kraven as a solo lead character within the broader Spider-Man universe, noting that the character's relatively obscure status among general audiences may have hindered box office performance. Despite these challenges, the film holds cultural and narrative significance as an origin story that explores themes of morality, family, and identity. It presents Kraven not merely as a villain but as a complex antihero whose ethical code, personal trauma, and exceptional skills position him in a morally gray area. The film's portrayal of his relationship with family members, particularly the tension with his father and half-brother, adds emotional resonance to an otherwise action-driven narrative. The integration of mysticism through Calypso's character and the exploration of animalistic instincts juxtaposed with human intelligence create a layered narrative that distinguishes Kraven from typical superhero or villain archetypes. The official trailer, released ahead of the film's premiere, emphasized the transformation of Sergei into Kraven, his confrontations with criminal adversaries, and the use of natural and urban landscapes to highlight the character's hunting prowess. Red band versions of the trailer hinted at the film's mature tone, signaling a departure from traditional family-friendly superhero fare. The marketing strategy sought to position the film as both a thrilling action experience and a character-driven exploration of an antihero, appealing to fans of the comics and audiences interested in more grounded, psychologically complex superhero stories. Ultimately, Kraven the Hunter presents a story of evolution, survival, and the intricate dynamics of power and morality. While the film's reception and financial results may temper expectations for future installments, it remains a noteworthy exploration of a lesser-known Marvel character, offering audiences an unvarnished glimpse into the psyche of a hunter who walks the fine line between heroism and obsession. The combination of action, character study, and mythic symbolism makes Kraven the Hunter a distinctive entry in Sony's Spider-Man universe, reflecting both the potential and the challenges of expanding lesser-known comic book characters into major cinematic narratives.